All right, good evening. Thank you all for being here tonight. I am elated to present to you our amazing speaker. But before we get started, I want to just thank Heritage Giving Circle for providing this forum so that you can learn from our incredible members. We have members that have such expertise and experience. Heritage started in 2017, and our giving circle since that time has been able to donate over $100,000 to organizations led by Black women that are serving Black women and children in our community. And so Keela will talk to you toward the end of our program more about Heritage and how you can support us and get involved. But you are actually here to learn from the guru herself, Kimberly O'Neil, who is an award-winning professor, executive leader, and social good expert. She was the youngest serving African-American woman city manager in the United States. As a veteran senior government and nonprofit executive, Kimberly has used her voice to impact policy decisions while lobbying in New York City and on Capitol Hill. She now works within the social sector and leads Giving Blueprint, a consulting company with a mission to impact social change through the development of strategic partnerships and growth plans within the social sector. As a social entrepreneur, Kimberly recognizes the value that nonprofit startup organizations provide to communities, especially in historically discriminated communities. In January 2015, she launched Call Studio, an incubator and training initiative that is designed to reduce the number of failing nonprofit organizations in North Texas. Kimberly has been recognized as the 2017 Minority Business Leader Award honoree by the Dallas Business Journal, a 2019 Humanitarian Visionary Award honorable mention by the Juanita J. Craft Civil Rights House and Museum, and a 2020 Social Innovation Award honoree by the United Way of Metropolitan Dallas. She previously served as the chair for the City of Plano Community Relations Commission. In addition to being a sought-after thought leader, strategist, and speaker, Kimberly is a published author and professor who was honored as the 2017 Outstanding Associate Faculty of the Year for Collin College. She is the founding director of Power in Action, a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, and a founding member of Heritage Giving Fund, the first Black giving circle in Texas, and serves as board chair-elect for Social Venture Partners Dallas. I want to introduce to some, and for others, just let you know, y'all are in for a treat tonight with Kimberly O'Neil, the expert in residence for Heritage Giving Fund, and I say all of Dallas. So Kim, thank you for being here and giving us this knowledge. We're elated to have you.
Thank you. I wish we could talk some more, but I'll catch you later. I'm so excited to be here with everyone. I haven't taught nonprofit training classes in so long because of the pandemic. So I'm really excited to be with you all tonight. I'll just say this, I am a non-traditional. For those of you that do know me, I'm very non-traditional in my approach to teaching. So you will not get slides. I want you to stay connected with me. I want to make sure that you are taking in the information that I'm going to give to you. And I want you, as soon as you have a question, just drop it in the chat. Towards the end, I'll go through and I'll answer questions in a rapid fire way. If I need to call you off mute or otherwise, I'll make sure we do that as well. But I'm excited to be here. Some of you may have heard one of my classes that I teach is called Am I Ready? 10 Things to Consider When Launching a Nonprofit. I put a workshop together because I thought it was important for us to not only talk about, what happens after you get your paperwork back from the IRS, but what should you be thinking of before you even file your paperwork. So tonight's conversation is going to be based on a conversation for those of you that are trying to create a nonprofit organizations, and for those of you that are in the beginning stages, that 0 to 3 year time period. I'm going to say right now, if you are easily a person whose feelings are easily hurt, let it go tonight. The information that I'm providing to you is being provided out of love. It is being provided out of love for wanting to see people succeed, especially when they're doing work to take care of our communities. It is out of love because I care about this nonprofit sector before I care about any mission. And those of you who've been around me before have heard me say this. I care about the sector before I care about any mission you can tell me about. And that's because I focus on capacity building. I focus on compliance. I focus on helping people. I don't care how small the organization is when I meet you. I focus on helping people to scale what is needed in our communities, despite what people might say about you. And so to get some pen, get a pen and paper, make sure you tap into the replay later. But tonight we're going to cover 10 things to consider when launching a nonprofit organization. And this conversation, again, is based on those of you who have not started and those of you who might be between the 0 to 3 year mark, because for many of you, some of this information you do not know. So this is what we're going to cover tonight. We're going to cover 4 core areas of responsibility for new nonprofit leaders. We're going to cover the important areas of regulation and compliance. We're going to cover understanding the problem and the need of your mission. We're going to talk about the non-negotiable foundation of nonprofit operations. And finally, we're going to talk about why mission-driven solutions and impact are keys to success. So one of the things that I want to make sure, if you utilize social media, tag Heritage Giving Fund on social media, share these nuggets with people, even if it's for you to remember what we've talked about. So let's jump right into it, because I have a lot and I want to leave as much time as I can for Q&A. Let's start off with the first consideration. This is under the first category: knowing the regulations and compliance requirements governing public charities. It is non-negotiable. You have got to know what is important to the states that you create your nonprofit. Some states it's called a non-stock corporation, but you are creating a nonprofit first on the state level. And once you get that approval, you're sending that paperwork over to the IRS for that 501c3. So for the purpose of this conversation, we are talking about public charities, 501c3. Okay, let's get this in our mind before we go into this tonight. You do not own a nonprofit organization. I can't hear you, but say that. I do not own a nonprofit organization. When that paperwork is filed, the organization is owned by the people, because it is a public charity with 501c3 status. What that means is the majority of your funding is coming from other sources, from grants, from donations, just from other people. And because of that, you will forever be a founder. You can forever be a leader, but you do not own a nonprofit organization. When we create these organizations, we're creating an organization to address some sort of an issue, right? And that has to be at the forefront of all of the work that we're doing. So consideration number 1, before you start, and if you have already started your nonprofit organization, research all state and federal requirements for the nonprofit and make sure you are familiar with the financial structure and obligations of the organization. So let's take that a little bit. You need to make sure, if you founded your organization or are thinking about founding your organization in the state of Texas, make sure you understand what the state of Texas requires of you. Number 2, then once you get that back, make sure you understand what the IRS requires of you. Some of you have gotten little DMs from me on social media about Venmo and Cash App being used as your primary resources or your primary tool for collecting donations. And I keep telling people, do not use that. There's a reason why I'm telling you that. The IRS requires that you send an acknowledgement letter for donations that are over a certain dollar amount. You can only send an acknowledgement letter if you have someone's contact information. You don't have contact information with Venmo and Cash App. They were not designed for the nonprofit sector. So you are out of compliance if you are not able to send an acknowledgement letter at the required dollar amount for the IRS if you don't have that information. So you have to make sure ignorance of, my heart, my passion, someone told me this was a message from above that I was supposed to start this. Well, if you were told to start this, you were also told to be in compliance and be a good steward of the responsibilities and running and founding a nonprofit organization. So pay attention to the state and the federal requirements. Just a tip for you. If you are raising funds online, there's a likelihood that people could be sending you funds from other states. There are 41 states, so make a little note. There are 41 states that require that nonprofits who solicit donations in their states must register with them. So if you are getting donations, possibly the possibility of you getting donations, maybe you want to do some activities. Solicitation doesn't always mean that you are actively going out for it. You need to make sure that you are registered in all 41 states in the United States. Make sure you are in compliance, okay? And then make sure you understand your financial structure and the obligations of the organizations. I meet so many people that don't know what their fiscal years are. They don't know if they're on a January 1 to December 31st fiscal year, if they're on a July 1 to June 30th fiscal year. That is important because every year a 501c3 is required to file an IRS 990. So that's the equivalent, although they're tax exempt organizations, you are required to file an IRS 990 report. If you do not file that for 3 consecutive years, the IRS automatically revokes your 501c3 status, which means anyone that's donating money to you will no longer be able to claim that as an exemption on their taxes. So you want to make sure that you understand your filing, your fiscal year, because your fiscal year is going to denote when you are supposed to file your IRS 990. If you cannot file your IRS 990, the same thing that we do with the IRS 1040 for our personal taxes, you're going to request an extension. So just make sure, consideration number 1, make sure you understand all of the federal and state requirements. They change, they can change throughout the year. So make sure you're always in the habit of trying to figure out or just keeping yourselves updated, especially doing free or paid for training. It is very important to your organization. So consideration number 2, to be effective, you must understand the problem and the need of the organization that you're founding, okay? To be effective, you must understand the problem and the need, because your mission will be around that and you're going to create a solution based on, or a set of solutions based on the problem and the need. So many times when we go into this nonprofit work, we do identify something in our community that we know needs to be addressed, but we don't sit down and really understand if that's a ongoing issue that requires an organization, or if this is an issue for just a few people and maybe a few of us can just volunteer our time, help them, and the issue is no longer there anymore. We have to really understand if we're dealing with a systemic issue or if we're dealing with a very unique set of situations that can be addressed a lot differently and don't require an organization. So make sure that you are familiarizing yourself with the subject matter area in which the problem you want to solve resides. That is your responsibility. You need to understand the data. I always ask people when they tell me about the problem, how do you know that to be true? How do you know that to be true? And one of the things that they say to me is because they've seen it. And sometimes for many of us, especially the smaller organizations that are serving our historically discriminated communities, sometimes we know that it's an issue and it's been an issue for a long time and we are tired and we want to address the issue. But you still have to make sure that you understand the impact that you're trying to make. And that means that you have to understand how this story even starts. If you are not responsible enough to become the subject matter expert in the area in which you plan to address that particular problem, you're not making sure that you understand the true problem and the need. We need to ensure that we are focused on the problems and the needs of the organizations that we are addressing and serving. Consideration number 3, create a list of the assets and resources, the people and the organizations that already exist in the community and are already doing the work. We have to stop being repeat people that just repeat the cycle over and over again, unless you can identify a key differentiation in what you're doing. And that could be larger organizations are overlooking your community. Maybe they are not paying attention to the cultural nuances that are important to your particular community. But you have to start by understanding who is here, what is here, how can I access them? How can the people that I want to serve access them? Is there a problem with accessing those resources and those assets? You have to understand what's already around you in order to be able to address the issue. The last thing that you want to do, my friend Jasmine Crowe, she's the founder of Gooder, says, we should not, in the nonprofit sector, we are always competing for money. That's true. But we should never be competing to impact social good and social change. So if we are competing with people that are trying to do the exact same thing, and that we don't even understand our differentiation, is it that our organization is needed, or is it that our egos need to be fed? I'm going to say that again. Is it that our organizations need to exist, or is it that our egos need to be fed? And if it rests on our egos need to be fed, I am going to challenge you and encourage you to say, how can I help to address this particular issue that seemingly people are already addressing? How can I help them? How can I maybe volunteer my time, write a check? Does it require that after I look at the assets and the resources in the community, does it require that I create a new organization? Many times that answer is no. And it's our ego because we've gotten visions and other things, and that's fine. But it might mean that you can address the issue a lot differently than, I'm being honest, than taking on the burden of starting a nonprofit organization. I have run a nonprofit. I have founded a nonprofit. I will take a for-profit any day because the rules are very different and I get to control things a lot differently. So make sure you understand. And then, like I said, you want to consideration number 4, you want to make sure you're assessing if your nonprofit is necessary to address the need, or if the issue can be resolved through your work as a volunteer, a funder, or honestly, as a for-profit. I've worked with clients and I've asked them, why do you want to start this as a nonprofit? And for them, it's simply, I'm doing good. I thought I had to do it this way. Absolutely not. We can have a for-profit that's doing good. We can donate resources, honestly, because we have more control over the type of profit that's coming into our business, and we get to direct that to multiple places. So consider if a nonprofit actually needs to be created, or maybe you can create a for-profit that has more strength and more power in helping to address the issues, because you have funding that's coming in that you can donate and utilize any way you choose because it is your company. Right? I'm going to look real quick to see if there are any questions before I move on to this next part. Okay, I don't see any. So let's go to consideration number 5. Consideration number 5 starts about capacity building, and this is when it becomes my sweet spot. How do we build? So oftentimes we hear the term capacity building and people don't really know what that is, or there's some level of limitation to what they think capacity building is. Capacity building is not limited to operations. Capacity building is building your organization up. So what things, what people, what places, what things, what human capital, what social capital, what financial capital is needed to strengthen and improve the quality of your organization. So capacity building is about strengthening and being able to sustain and increase the work that you're able to do in a sustainable way. So consideration number 5 out of the 10, be prepared to explain your connection to the need and the credentials that make you and your team of experts the people that we should rely on to address this problem. This does not mean that you need a bachelor's, master's, or doctorate. It means, why are you the authority, right? Do you even know why you're the authority and being able to bring these solutions to the table? Is it because maybe you experienced the things that you're trying to address and you know what it's like? Well, that is your credentials for this. Is it that you may have a degree in a particular area and you've done some research, so you're an authority from a very different perspective? So I want you all to really tap into, for everybody on your team, not just you as the founder, every board member, every key volunteer, what is it about this person? What is it about this person or these groups of people? What is it about them in their most unique ways that make them an important asset to the organization? Because based on that, you're going to be able to utilize them a lot differently throughout the organization. You need to know who's great with marketing. You need to know who's great with event planning. You need to know who's great with doing budgets. You need to know who's great with accounting. You need to know, is anybody on your team an attorney, have access to attorneys? You want to know what everybody's skill set and credentials. You want to make sure that people that represent the organization, represent the communities that you're serving, is there some sort of representation. So you want experts who understand what needs to change. I often say we want to be in the business of addressing things from a perspective that's culturally relevant and not get people to assimilate to what we think they should do based on our individual preferences. That's not what we should be doing if it's not right for that particular community. Consideration number 6, this is the one I get a lot of calls on. I don't like my board. How do I get rid of my board? I want to start my board over. They don't want to volunteer their time. They don't want to donate $30 a month. They don't want to come to meetings. And if all of that is the case, then get rid of all of them and start over again. Because your board is the most important group of folks that you have, because they are the governing authority. You as a founder may sit in a role as the executive director and have a non-voting place on the board. But if something happens, it is your governing body that is legally responsible for your organization. So I will tell you, draft your dream team. You should develop a matrix of committed board members, volunteers, and staff. You will know it's going to take time to cultivate, but who are those people? And you don't have to know them. And everybody that you consider a key asset that's currently on your team should do the exact same exercise. Who are the potential board members that we want, or who is a type? How do you describe what it is that you want out of a board member, so that you can begin to utilize work within your network and the networks that you are attached to try to get connections to these folks, to be able to invite them to possibly consider being on the board. But in order to get, this is where we kind of mess up though. We want the best of the best, but our house is not in order. And we want the best of the best to come in and help us get our house in order. And I'm going to tell you right now, the best of the best are not going to touch mess. The best of the best want to come into organizations that may have some challenges, but not a bunch of liabilities right out the gate. They're not going to come. So some of the things that I've already been talking about, the first 5 considerations, this 6th consideration, those top things, you're not going to get a great board member utilizing Cash App, because they're going to have questions about accounting, and accountants are going to have questions about Cash App and Venmo. No shade towards them. They're just not designed right now for our sector. I know Venmo had a trial run of an app adjustment for the nonprofit sector, but they closed that, I think, the beginning of 2020 or the end of 2019, and they haven't reopened it for nonprofits to try, and there was a very small group. So you want to make sure when you're drafting your dream team of committed board members, volunteers, and staff, you want to make sure you're drafting them and you're also being honest and saying, for me to attract that person, is my house in order enough for them to actually consider? because if not, we're really wasting time. So make sure you're focusing on, from a capacity building perspective, we want the best of the best, but we also have to present our very best and be honest and open about our areas where there's opportunity for change and improvement, and then those areas where we're just struggling. If we at least admit to those things up front, then people can walk in the door knowing this is an area that I can really, really help in. And as long as everybody collectively is open to the possibility and the ideas of making changes, then we can definitely do that and go in that direction. Okay. Consideration number 7. When I talked about your network and your network's network, when you're looking at your draft team of committed members and volunteers and staff, you want to make sure you identify who is connected to those people or those types of people, right? Maybe it's an attorney that you're looking for. So who within your network has access to attorneys or knows a particular attorneys? So you need to know which donors invest in what investors in your organizations, who can help you to attract those particular connections. And again, when you're asking people for those introductions and for those recommendations and for those references, remember about your house being in order. Your house has to be in order, because if you're asking me to make an introduction, that's now my reputation, right? So you want to make sure when you're asking for support and you're asking for assistance, that you're asking in a way where you can be honest about the challenges, open about the needs that you have and the help that you need in this, so they can articulate that. Because it's not necessary that necessarily people aren't going to say no, that they don't want to help you, but they need to know that going in. The last thing you want to do is to walk into an organization and it's just a bunch of mess, and I've already signed up and now I'm here and I'm part of the team that's legally responsible. I don't ever want surprises like that. And I've been in boardrooms where folks have been surprised like that, and that is totally unfair. All right. And then my close to my last section, mission-driven solutions and impact are key. Okay. Mission-driven. Here's the thing. You have a mission, and the mission should focus on that particular problem. It should be vague enough that allows you to create different programs, but it should be specific enough that people are clear about what you do. There are a myriad of ways to develop a mission statement, but sometimes I see these extra long paragraphs, and as a licensed nonprofit consultant, when I start working with people, what I tell them is it looks like you're just trying to raise money. It doesn't really sound like you're trying to solve anything. It sounds like you're trying to be a master of everything, and you are not even sure where you fit in the narrative. So you want to make sure that you are very clear. So consideration number 8, you want to be clear on how you define your target audience for the organization. You want to be very, very clear. Sometimes I ask people, well, who are you serving? Everybody? Well, no, you can't serve everybody, because you can't serve everybody well, because you have a key differentiation. Remember, I asked about that earlier. You have a key differentiation. That key differentiation is going to allow you to be laser focused on a particular group. The group might be a little wide, but it's not just going to be endless. It's not all women. It's not all men. It's not all children. It's going to be very specific, right? I may serve women who I identify maybe as 35 to 55 that may be transitioning. So you want to create an avatar. And that's the term that we use in business. We want to create an avatar for what that perfect target client looks like. We want to give that target client a name, because then we begin to create from as close to a reality as we can, and not this, what we think everybody wants us to say is that we can serve everybody. For those of us that are veterans in the sector, when I hear, or when we hear you say that you serve all women, when you say you serve all men, when you serve all children, I instantly know you haven't done your homework, because there's no way that you can serve everyone. You have limited resources, you're just starting out, and you were created to do a particular thing. So not all women are going to fit into that particular mold. And so you want to be very clear on how you define your target audience, and how that target audience lends back to the problem that you've identified in the needs within the particular community. You want to, it's this Key for your first 3 years. Use your knowledge, your team's collective knowledge, to design one program, one product, one service, not 10, not 9, not 5. Start with one and do it well. Funders, the reality, when funders hear you say you do all of these things, but you've been around for 2 years and you've never raised any money, how? How? You can't do it. You don't have any funding. Volunteers even cost money. People always say, well, I'll have my volunteers are expensive. Because number one, you need insurance. And I'll get to that in a minute. So you want to make sure you are curating something significant that addresses the mission directly and head on. And stop worrying about doing it and serving 5,000 people. If all you can serve in the beginning is 25, but it's 25, it's manageable, you are able to build and see what needs to be tweaked, 25 amazing results is way better than 5,000 people that just showed up and got nothing from you. So you want to be able to use your knowledge to design one solution for the issue, the problem that you're addressing in the very beginning. Sometimes you can have a spillover to a second, but that really should be it. And so it can be a program, it could be a product, it can be a service. Be okay with being slow to grow, because you can be so intentional. You can be so intentional about actually impacting the community and not just saying we did it, because we have too many people in the sector saying they've done things and they've done nothing. So you want to be very intentional in creating something signature. And sometimes I hear people say, I just want to give this as an example. I host an event and it brings 500 girls once a year. Okay, well, what do? Well, they come and we talk to them. And then what do? When they leave, what is your engagement with them? Do you track them? Do you follow them? Because we can't really assess impact if all they did was show up for an event. That's an output. That's 500 people. I need to know what happened to the 500 people, whether they be kids, family. I need to know what happened to those 500 people as a result of that one-time experience. So how do you continue to assess? Did you give them something that they'll use over time, skill sets, something they'll use over the next year? And maybe they come back and see you another year. Maybe you're engaging with the school. So utilize your knowledge to focus and design one good and solid program. Because if not, you will honestly end up just being overwhelmed, will be overwhelmed. And then finally, consideration number 10, go into creating or moving your nonprofit organization forward, knowing that the results and the impact you want to have on the community and those impacted by the issue, you have to know why you want to be there. You have to understand why you exist. Because everybody's going to tell you that you don't need to exist. You're too tiny, you're itty bitty. And I'll talk about itty bitty too, because that's code word for me. They'll say you're itty bitty, you're really not needed. Itty bitty, small organization and historically discriminated communities are valuable. They are valuable because we are often creating those solutions because the large organizations don't want to touch that part of the challenges in our community, or they don't know how to. Or the narrative that they're sharing about us is so false that no one wants to participate. So you want to go in and own at this particular moment that you might be small. Celebrate that. Celebrate that and know that that is actually an asset, because it's an opportunity to tweak, to fine tune, and to impact a lot differently, because you are able to pay attention to the people, the places, and the things that are needed to impact the community in a more positive way. Okay, so I'm going to stop there because those are my 10. I will, as a when the replay is sent, I will actually send you my handout so that you can take notes when you're watching the replay. You can actually use that to take some notes in each of the 10 areas. I think that might be helpful for you all. I didn't think about it ahead of time. So we'll send that out to you all so you'll have that with the replay. But I'm going to stop there. But I did say I wanted to come back on 2 issues. One, insurance. If you have a nonprofit organization today, now I don't care if you just started it today, but if you have a nonprofit that you founded today, then you need to have nonprofit insurance. Not next week, today. And then a nonprofit, in addition to the general liability insurance, you need to make sure that there's directors and omissions insurance as well. That's a rider that's on top of that, because that protects your board members. I'll never forget growing up, one of my parents' friends was on a board. There wasn't enough financial resources. So if the insurance is not enough and you don't have directors and omissions insurance or that's not enough for the liability, guess who has to pay for that? The board members. That's why you won't get the best of the best if your house is not in order. I will never serve on a board that does not have insurance, and it has them. I ask specifically about D&O because I know that my personal assets can be attacked because someone else made a mistake in the organization. So today, if you do not have insurance, Google insurance for nonprofits. If you are in Texas, that is a nonprofit that helps nonprofits to find insurance. They don't cover, they connect you with a broker. They do, and it is a nonprofit organization. They do not have relationships with all 50 states, but Texas, for the majority of people on here are going to be from Texas. Texas is definitely a state that is covered and can get those resources. So that's going to be number one. Be sure that you have general liability and you make sure that you have D&O insurance. And if you are in the business of working with children, make sure you let them know that. Make sure you ask them, what kinds of things do I need to do from a risk management perspective? What kinds of things do I need to ask for? Or what types of things do I need to have to ensure that as we're onboarding volunteers, board members, staff members, what additional security things do we need to do in terms of background checks? And I'll say, do that for any vulnerable population. So children, the elderly, people with disabilities, anything like that. You want to make sure anytime you have a very vulnerable community, you want to make sure that you're also asking your insurance companies, do I need anything else? Don't try to not give them all the possible scenarios to keep your premium down, because that actually does not help the organization. For most of you, it might be about $1,200, $1,300 a year. If you cannot afford $1,200 to $1,300 a year for insurance, shut the organization down anyway. Just shut it down. Just shut it down. Because if you can't afford the insurance, you surely can't run an organization. So that might sting a little bit, because it stings people when I say that. But if you bought a car, can you drive that car off the lot without insurance from a car dealer? The answer is no, unless you have enough money in the bank, right? But for most people, they have to get the insurance. So if you are driving this nonprofit off the lot as soon as you get that approval from the IRS, and you can't afford insurance and you're already operating and doing programs and volunteer activities and something happens, how are you going to pay for that? So just make sure you really consider that. And I did forget about the second thing that I was going to say, but I'll come back to that. I know that we probably have about 15 minutes, so I want to jump into questions. If you have questions, drop them in the chat. So Angela Banks, any suggestions for the insurance company? So you want to go insurance for nonprofits, Akila, drop that in the chat, insurancefornonprofits.org, and then it'll walk you through the process. And I'm speaking from experience. I've used them. I used them when I ran a 7-figure nonprofit organization. Anytime I felt that we could do something a little bit better, I went straight to them and went straight to our broker to get different quotes. So it absolutely does work. And they are very reputable and they have been around for a long, long time. Let's see. I don't see any questions. Are there any questions or do I need to look someplace else, Akila? And don't be afraid to ask questions. I'm a licensed nonprofit. I'm a straight shooter, but this is a safe environment. This is about ensuring that you all can get the information that you need to build successful organizations. This is not about making anyone feel bad. It might sting. I told you that it might sting, but it doesn't mean that we're not here. We're doing this as a resource, as a way to help you. And there's so many organizations that need this help within our community. So please ask, even if you're not comfortable, DM the question. If you don't want people to see that it's from you, just DM the question so that I can see it. And then that way I can at least make sure the question is answered. So here are some things that I'm thinking about that you all need to really pay attention. So insurance, if you don't have insurance, that's a problem. 2, if you don't have an accountant, that's a bigger problem. All right. So I do not recommend CPAs, Nellie, but what I can do, if you send me, and I know you're connected to me, if you send me an email, I'll send you some places you can go to get some recommendations for a nonprofit CPA. And that's important to know. It cannot just be an accountant. It has to be someone that is knowledgeable of nonprofit accounting. So when you're looking for a bookkeeper and an accountant, because some of you may use a bookkeeper on a monthly basis and then go to an accountant maybe quarterly or something like that, you want to make sure you're specifically asking them, are you a nonprofit bookkeeper? Have you worked with nonprofits? Are you familiar with the Unified Chart of Accounts, the UCOA? Are you familiar with the because everybody, my recommendation is that small nonprofits, when you are working on the coding for your finances, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, so just like your regular accounting, or if you work with any type of budget in your personal life, you have your line item for your rent or your mortgage, your line item for your utilities, your line item for insurance, for car payment, for credit cards. Well, that's a chart of accounts. When you're using QuickBooks or any financial management system, there's a numeric code that accompanies those descriptions. And in the nonprofit sector, we recommend that you use the nonprofit Unified Chart of Accounts, because that Unified Chart of Accounts, the way that it's structured, matches with the way that the IRS 990, the tax form, is outlined when you have to fill out the 990 EZ or the full 990 form. The lineup, it makes it so much easier for your accountants that's preparing your 990 to be able to complete it. A lot of people create their own chart of accounts, and then you have to spend a lot of extra money with a CPA who's now trying to figure out how to categorize things to fit it into the IRS 990 form. So my strong recommendation is that you utilize the IRS Unified Chart of Accounts, and that you're asking your bookkeepers specifically and your accountant, your CPA, are you skilled in nonprofit accounting, nonprofit bookkeeping? Because we have so many different nuances when it comes to restricted versus unrestricted. Then you have your different programs, and then you have unrestricted. So you want to make sure you have someone that truly understands that. And when you start bringing grants into that too becomes a lot complicated. So you want to make sure that you have someone that understands that and can actually give you advice on things that are happening, and someone, if this is their area, someone that's going to be knowledgeable on when nonprofit accounting rules change, because they do change, and we typically get about a year to know what's going to happen the following year, and your nonprofit accountant or your accountant needs to be able to know that that's happening so that you can remain in compliance as well. Any suggestions for organizations that help with capacity building. So Cost Studio, so that's my incubator. We are actually getting ready to relaunch and the end of this month. And we have a goal at this particular point by the end of December 22. All of our training is now virtual. Pre-pandemic, we were already switching over so that we could touch and impact people outside of North Texas as well. And so we will be focusing on capacity building. We have a goal to help at minimum 250 Black-led nonprofit organizations scale to a minimum of $250,000 in their operating budget by December of 2022. And then also figure out other ways that they need to be sustainable and scalable just based on the individual needs of the organization. They're depending upon here, SSIR. So there's the Stanford Social Innovation Review. If you have never heard of that magazine before, I highly recommend that you subscribe to it. It comes out 4 times a year. It's about $59 for the year. If you don't want to pay the $59, you can still go on their website. You can tap into a number of articles for free. If you are affiliated with any school or a library, you may be able to tap into SSIR through their database at no cost as well. That is a great place to go to get any information on articles, journals. Occasionally they have free resources. Sometimes they are nominal, like $69, and then they have an annual conference that's it's a few $100s, but they're one of my go-to organizations. Of course, Heritage Giving Fund, in terms of not only do we grant out award funding every single year, but we do make an effort to do technical training like this throughout the year at no cost to ensure that we are giving back to the community in a different way. We want to make sure at the end of the day that the organizations that we fund and the organizations that are eligible to apply for our grants, not only whether or not you receive a grant, that we're providing you with the information that you need to be able to position yourself a lot differently in this sector. And that's one of the reasons why we exist and why we are so committed to focusing on smaller, newer grassroots organizations as well. So are there any additional questions at all before I go that I can answer in rapid fire? One more, let's see. You're welcome. You're more than welcome. Anybody want to send anything to me privately? So I'm going to repeat some of the things that I said. I'll do just kind of recap my top 10 considerations for you. So the 10 things that you need to consider before you start a nonprofit or right after you start a nonprofit. This is for those of you who are in the 0 to 3 year category. Number one, you're going to research all of the state and federal requirements for nonprofits and make sure you are familiar with the financial structure and obligations of the organization. 2, you want to make sure that you're familiarizing yourself with the subject matter area in which for the problem that you want to solve for the particular community. 3, you want to create a list of the assets and the resources, so the people and the organizations that currently exist in the community. 4, you want to make sure you're assessing if your nonprofit organization is necessary to address the need, or if the issue can be resolved through your work as a volunteer, a funder, or by a for-profit body. So remember, to do good, we don't have to create a nonprofit. To do good, we just have to want to do good, okay? 5, we want to be prepared to explain your connection to the need and the credentials that make you and your team the experts on the problem. And let me tell you something, don't let anybody try to minimize how great you are. If you know you are the bomb.com, make sure you tell people that. I will tell people that in a minute. Nobody can train like me. No one knows this information the way that I do, because I am intimately aware of the issues for startup nonprofit organizations. That's my skill set. There may be better nonprofit trainers. There may be better people that can address nonprofits as a whole. But as a skill set, nonprofit startups in North Texas, there's no one better than me. Own that. It is okay. It's not arrogant if you can back it up, because I am very committed to saying that, because I want people to understand, if you come for this community, then come with the right intentions, because if not, I'm going to challenge why you're even here, messing with the people who are trying to serve our communities in a different way. I'm very protective of the community. So being confident and making sure people know it is not a sign of arrogance. You don't have to be loud about it. What it says is that I am so comfortable in being the expert in this area. I am not going to allow anyone to do damage, any further damage to the area in which I'm working in. Consideration number 6, draft your dream team of committed board members, volunteers, and staff, knowing it will take time to cultivate the groups. 7, develop your network, which should include donors, investors, and those who can help you expand to new connections. 8, be clear on how you define your target audience. 9, use your knowledge to design one solution in the beginning, just one, for the issue, be it a program, a product, or a service. And then 10, go into this endeavor knowing the results and impact you want to have on the community and those impacted by the issue. And my little dangling carrot knowledge for you: get insurance and get a CPA and a bookkeeper that are knowledgeable about nonprofit accounting. And so I want to be respectful of everybody's time. I can't believe, do you recommend hiring a nonprofit coach early on? April, I don't necessarily recommend hiring a coach. I recommend, like, in terms to work with you one-on-one, because that can be very costly. What I do recommend, April, that you do is invest in training. Like, think about the things that I talked about tonight. What are the things that I talked about tonight that you weren't that familiar with? And how can you get more knowledge on those particular areas? And then I will also say, be very careful about hiring a nonprofit coach. The same way I said, ask your CPA about nonprofit accounting, ask your nonprofit coach how many nonprofits they've run. Ask your nonprofit coach how many nonprofits they've built. Ask them how much money they've raised. Okay, you want to any other training resource, SSIR, Social Venture Partners Dallas, Heritage Giving Fund, look at the colleges and universities, look at Coursera. Coursera has some of their classes are for don't have a cost, but there are a number of free resources on Coursera. So you can go, and some of those free courses are connected to four-year institutions. So I would look at some of these online learning management platforms. And then of course, Cause Studio will be launching our ongoing training with resources and templates as well. So we'll be down, it won't just be the online demand training, there'll be resources and live classes as well. And with that being said, wait, I have one more that just came in. Yes, if you can just, I'm just Kim Online, everyone on social media. If there is a question that you have, just DM me, and just let me know you were part of the conversation tonight. Just DM me any additional questions that you have, and just give me a few days and I'll get some responses to you. I may even just tweet out some resources. So DM me your questions, or just tweet me your questions, or send them to me on Instagram, and I will go on and tweet out some resources and respond to you directly. And Angela, if you can email me and I may send some information out on how you can register in the 41 states. And I may do a class on it, a free one, because this is important for you all to remain in compliance. I hate that we only had an hour, because I can talk for like 9 hours. Like, seriously, I can talk all day long. I used to do it in Cause Studio. But I want to thank you all for your time and for staying with us tonight. I want to thank you all for just putting your arms around Heritage Giving Fund, and for our founders and our co-founders that had the vision to put this together. We have a goal of serving you all in the community. And so it is my honor. I always say this at the end of all of my trainings. It is my honor. I do not take this for granted. I know a lot of people think I'm tough, but I never take this for granted, being able to share my knowledge with people, because that's a responsibility that I cannot take lightly, because you all then move with authority based on what I've said. So I thank you for your time today. I thank you for your time just outside of this forum as well. And we look forward to serving you all in the future. Please make sure that you continue to look at our events coming up, because we do have some additional ones coming up over the next few months. And one of them is about board development, and you do not want to miss that. So thank you all. You all have a good night. You stay blessed, you stay well, and stay committed to your organizations. Just one thing I ask you to do: if you're going to build it with honor, integrity, and make it sustainable, and make sure you have really good impact. And when you don't know, ask. Just ask the question. Thank you all. You all have a good night. And I'll see you on social media. Have a good one. Bye-bye.